Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Simone Bianco. I'm a PhD candidate at Virginia Tech. And today I'm going to introduce a paper called Early and Late Stage Startup Founding in Hospitality, the Effect on Incumbent Market Value. This paper has been developed by me, Dr. Florian, assistant professor at Virginia Tech, Dr. Anyu, assistant professor at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and has been published on Annals of Tourism Research in June 2022. This presentation, this video is developed in two parts. In the first part, it will last 3 minutes. I will just introduce the paper. I will do a brief abstract, 3 minutes abstract, where you can have a general idea of the paper. And if you're satisfied with that or you don't like it, you can just skip the rest of the video, because after that I will have another 10 minutes part of the video where I will go deep in each part of the paper, and you'll be able to skip through each part in the case you are more interested in the methodology or you just want to see the results more in deep. You can do so in the YouTube toolbar. So let's start by explaining the paper at a glance. So first of all, we talk about startups in this paper, but so far in hospitality, researchers have only investigated Airbnb. Airbnb is important. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the only startups, because startups in the last 10 years, they have received billions and billions of funding. All travel startups, especially in the lodging industry. This is all beside Airbnb. But as said, researchers, they don't go beyond Airbnb. No, research in hospitality doesn't go beyond Airbnb. So what are we trying to understand? We try to understand if this funding that are received by startups have any impact on the market value on the stock market of incumbent firms, Marriott, Hilton. We do so in order to understand whether investors have completed a risk assessment. What is the risk factor that they think that new startups rising in the industry have? Do they see it as a positive thing? Do they see it as a risk, as a very important risk for incumbent company, for hotel companies? As a theoretical background, we focus on competitive dynamics, specifically on the awareness decision of the awareness, motivation, and capability model, moderated by the resource similarity, the level of resource similarity, market commonality, and size of these new firms compared to existing incumbent firms. So look at the results. We see how alternative lodging, which are essentially any other type of lodging which is not traditional hotel, they have a positive effect on incumbent market value in the early stage of their development, and whether they are developed in markets which are outside the main market of incumbent firms. This shows that investors, they don't see the development of these new startups as necessarily bad for firms, for incumbent firms, but they see it as a possibility to bring innovation into the industry. While obviously the development of traditional new firms or the excessive enlargement of intermediaries may be seen as a competitive move from them, and then have a negative effect on market value. Our research has different contribution. Firstly, we are the first one to go beyond Airbnb, so startups in hospitality. We add to the competitive dynamic literature in general, and we have practical contribution for practitioners. So from now on, this is at a glance paper. Now I'm gonna go to dig more deeper in the different part of this study. So first of all, we start by the reason. As said, Airbnb is not the only startups, but that was definitely the biggest and the most important. The competitive attack created by Airbnb were all unforeseen. Incumbent firms, they didn't understand what it was. Then it became a disruptor, maybe not. But what necessarily changed is that Airbnb blurred the boundaries of competition. So as you see here, before hotels were just competing with hotels, but now They compete with travel agency, with short-term lease, with anything that has a bed. But as said, there are many, many other startups that have received funding. So we try to understand how these foundings affect firms, whether to understand that investors have kind of learned from past mistake or not understanding, not regarding as Airbnb as a threat, and whether this risk assessment is affected by market commonality and resource similarity, which connects deeply to our theoretical background. Because you see, in previous literature, startups extensively study in finance and management, but not much in hospitality, not at all beside Airbnb. We saw that the stock market, they have a role in assessing the risk of new startups. Are startups going to bring innovation to the industry, or are they going to be biggest competitors? As said, competitive dynamics is our main theoretical focus, is our main theoretical background. Specifically, we use awareness as a driver of competition, and the stock market has been previously used in a paper, which you can also find on the channel, about creating and investigating awareness of competitive awareness of firms. When competitive awareness of firms, which is always affected by resource similarity, market commonality, and size, as stated by Chen, which from which we dig a lot in this paper, theoretically, to create our theoretical part. So methodology, to understand the market value, we use an event analysis. So at every event, at every funding round in this case, we understand how these affect the stock market using 3 different windows and a 5-factor plus momentum analysis. Pretty standard, and pretty used in the industry. Events. So these events that will have an effect are divided based on resource similarity. So the type of company, traditional company, alternative lodging, and lodging intermediaries like OTAs. The size based on the type of investment, whether the investment is an early investment or a late stage investment, and whether the firm that received the funding was based in US or outside the US, determine the level of market commonality. Data. So the database, we took the data of the startups and investment from Crunchbase, while the stock market were taken from CRISP, which is a stock market analytic data that is available on the Wharton database. So here we have a descriptive statistics of what are the lodging, what are the type of firms and the amount of funding received. Well, here we can see the first results. We see alternative lodging, they are receiving positive effect. Also in low type of market commonality, but also early stage investment seems to have a positive effect. Here, which is probably the most important, we crossed the results, but here we can really see a general outlook of the significant effect. We see how, talking about investment stage, alternative lodging have a positive effect, which lead us to think that investors treat alternative lodging, especially in the early investment, as a way to bring innovation to the industry. Maybe they think they can reap this agglomeration for their own companies. On the other side, negative effect is recorded for traditional lodging. So if a new firm which doesn't really bring innovation but only competitiveness to the market receive any funding, is then perceived as negative, while lodging intermediaries are perceived as a threat during a late stage investment. So if the network becomes sizable, the effect on the bottom line of incumbent hotel firm is perceived as negative. On the other hand, looking at market commonality, again, positive results for alternative lodging. Again, here we believe that this positive effect means that investor of incumbent firm thinks that if an innovation is created outside the main market, can be introduced by their firm in the market. While again, if a traditional lodging is developed within the main market, is a negative effect because it just brings competition without bringing innovation to the table. So contribution, this paper has several contributions. Firstly, from competitive dynamics to the general literature on competitive dynamics, because we assess the competitive awareness of stock market toward new startups, specifically in the HTM literature. We look at, we also add to the management literature because some paper already used the stock market to regard that to startups, but they saw different results, diametrically different results. And we believe that here the difference, the difference of service, of hospitality service compared to banking system that was the sample used at that time, changed the results. Then we have we add to the startup literature in hospitality by being the first actually to investigate startups beyond Airbnb. And then we have practical contribution because we suggest decision maker how to foresee new changes in the competitive field, which will lead them to preempt these competitive moves or shorten the time required to implement strategic responses. Without limitation, as every paper, not all the firms are public or in US as our sample. We only use the awareness of the MC model, and by using this type of methodology, we only look at a short window, a short term. And this was everything. I hope it was interesting. You can find the link to the paper and the citation in the description below. Do not hesitate to comment or reach out. I link my email here, but you can also find it in the description in case you have any question.